Hello folks, and welcome to the Folklore of Being. In this video series we're going to be looking at a magical creature known as goblins. Now, when I first started researching and scripting for this video some months ago, it was because goblins are my favourite magical creature. At least these guys were my favourite goblins. But what I found when researching is that the goblins of folklore, they're not just hideous humanoid creatures who are hell-bent on joyful damage, but they are in fact a broad spectrum of creatures who can range from evilness and ambivalence to kindness and servitude towards human beings. They look not only like these goblins can, but they can also look like this, and this, and this. And many of the goblins that I will describe have legends about them that have them as once being human spirits who have changed into goblins. Now, it is easy to wonder how a human spirit could possibly turn into a goblin, but the name goblin itself is thought to derive from the Greek kobalai, which means evil spirit. It developed through the Latin cobolus into the French goblin, and so into the English goblin. So the word goblin is just simply a word for evil spirit. So it's understandable how a human being spirit who is turned nasty or was nasty when they died could be considered a goblin. Although sometimes they do even shapeshift and change into much more hideous manifestations than that of a human being. So when researching goblins, it seems as though there's not very many origin stories concerned with goblins. One of them has them as originating from the Pyrenees Mountains in western France, where from there they spread out across Europe, Scandinavia and into the British Isles. And in each of these places they have developed their own unique characteristics that can not only differ from country to country, but as you've seen in other videos of mine, from county to county. In Norse and other mythologies, there were spirits who were cast from heaven with Lucifer, but they did not become cast down into hell, for they were simply dragged in the wake of the angels' fall, or they were neither too evil nor too good to belong to heaven or hell. Instead, they were scattered across the earth, and where they fell, they would inhabit. And that is how in some myths, beings such as trolls, elves, goblins and other creatures came into being. Goblins as a race of spirits share many qualities with their fairy counterparts, but they're considered the less benign of the two creatures. They're usually far more ugly and grotesque in appearance and in temperament, but they're much more inclined to do harm. They, like fairies, can inhabit not only wild and enchanted places here on Earth, but also in domains far removed from human sight. Creatures and other goods from these realms would also be enchanted themselves, and any human who interacts with them risks enchantment and misfortune, because goblins are not only skilled shapeshifters, but they're also adept in the magical arts and of sorcery. They will use these crafts against human beings for sport or other purposes. The goblins in Christina Rossetti's A Goblin Market attempt by means of a magical chant to lure a dangerously curious maiden Laura and her stronger-willed sister Lizzie into consuming their wares.
Morning and evening mates heard the goblins cry,
"Come buy our orchard fruits, come buy, come buy, come buy, come buy."
These wares are fruits of all kinds and seasons, lush, ripe and sorely tempting.
Pineapples, blackberries, apricots, strawberries, all up together in summer weather.
These lyrics suggest that the fruits were not grown on this earthly plane, but on one much like that of the fairy folk, whose lands are in a constant state of summer weather and everything is always ripe and lush. But what was the point of this interaction, and what price did Laura pay when the temptation for the fruits had become too much and she consumed the goblin wares? Laura paid for the fruits not with a coin, but with a lock of her golden hair. And this lock of Laura's hair was likely used in a spell of contagious magic, because in the days that followed, Laura began to fade, her hair began to thin and grey.
till Laura, dwindling, seemed knocking at death's door. Then Lizzie weighed no more.
Now Laura's sister Lizzie, who was able to resist the charms of the goblins, sought out and confronted the goblins, and though they tried to force her to eat their fruits, she wore them out with her resistance, and then used the remains of the splattered fruits and her mildly incestuous sisterly love as an antidote to the goblins' charms and incantations. Seriously though, you have to go read that poem. Like, in the beginning it's like, oh okay, goblin interaction, Lizzie's gonna save the sister, and oh wait a minute, what's this at the end here? So I'll put a link about it in the description. You can read it for yourself, because I am not reading those parts out here. No sir. Okay, back to the video. In many of the stories involving fairies or goblins who whisk a human away to their own realm, the methods of keeping them there seems to require a magical contract. Often this is in the form of certain foods, and if the fairy kidnapper is an honest one, they will offer these foods and invite them to stay. But some spirits, and even gods, will instead trick you into eating the foods without your knowledge that you are now bound there forever. The same applies for any goblin merchants who roam the human realm looking for the foolish, because the fruits and goods of these realms can be enchanted like the goblins are. The consumption of these fruits, Lizzie learned, had its own ugly price. Though not all goblins utilise magic to cause mayhem. Some goblins are less intelligent, having the minds of rambunctious children or simple souls who lack any mystical knowledge. Yet they can rouse storms and create fireballs and other such conjurations. These creatures can haunt lonely roads, farms, homes, forests and other wild places. They will physically assault, chase and threaten their victims, and will, if living in human habitations, indulge in poltergeist-like activities. But like any feral creature that moves into a home, they can be tamed and put to work, and some goblins, by their nature, are already fond of domestic servitude. So what we're going to find when this series progresses is that goblins are a diverse spectrum of creature types who must not be judged solely on their appearances, for a goblin may have fangs, claws and be hairy all over, but he may be a kind and helpful goblin, and a friendly looking old man goblin may be a mean and malignant entity who curses any man that he crosses. And as much as I would have loved to have included every cultural variation and story about goblins, this subject began to grow and grow and grow, and so this project will have to be a slow progression into the art of being a goblin. They're spread around the world like weeds, and it's going to take some time to rake through them all. For now, I'll take you on a small journey across the trenches and into goblin lines. We're going to recon into the spirit realms together to gather folkloric intel. I'll describe the goblins and the places they call home or roam, and if you keep this guide to goblins close to your heart, it may just rescue you when it comes to encountering a goblin kind. I'll even let you into some secrets about how to rid yourself of goblins, should you need to. And if you've angered or been cursed by them, you most certainly will need to employ some cunning folk magic to get you out of it. And predictably, I am going to start with the most evil or frightening and work my way down to the meekest and friendliest goblins, because the evil ones, they're my favourite ones now. So we'll stop there for now. I'm going to have a cup of tea, maybe you're going to have one too, and in the next video we'll get into the goblins known as bogies. Until then, thank you for watching, see you in the next one, bye bye.